somebody tell me what we're doing right now?
Hey, can we get everyone's attention, please?
Sure. The question is whether or not there is to be a closed session to discuss Resolution 2025-01.05. After conferring with the director and Commissioner Sanford, and kind of getting the flavor of the concerns, the bottom line on a closed session is whether it's in closed session or open session, the individual in question here, an employee, has not been given a rice notice, whether that's open session or closed session. So any discussion now of their performance is inappropriate without that notice. So my advice to the board is that if there is to be a discussion of the performance of the employee, that it would not happen at tonight's meeting, either an open or closed session. However, if there wasn't a discussion and you wanted to proceed with the resolution itself, that would be up to the board to decide.
I don't have concerns about performance, so, I mean, and again, I know it's not like a formal vote, but I wouldn't be asking any questions specific to any individual, any employee, right? Like, I just want to know, the only question I would know is how do we come up with the salary because it's a new position, and is it you know, in the range of what other housing authorities would do? That would be my only real concern and question, but it's not associated with any individual's performance.
And discussion along those lines, I think, would be acceptable.
Okay.
And I'll defer to Commissioner Sanford. I think Commissioner Sanford wanted to point out that he has concern that he wanted to bring to the board's attention.
Thank you, Council. So, two things. One, I again ask this board to table the resolution so that a proper rice notice could be given to the individual, because this position is tied to a person that is already planned or anticipated to be given this position. So I again ask that that we are able to discuss this employee properly, their performance, and that we table this resolution until the proper rice notice can be given.
Could I ask the director a question? Director, would holding off a month on this put the authority in a position where we wouldn't be able to function at the level that we should be functioning in this new arrangement with your staff?
I have to say that a month's notice, a month's delay would not significantly affect the operations of the housing authority. I would, however, say that as long as I've got the floor, that I am in favor of moving forward with this. But I have full confidence in Mr. Gother.
Understood. Again, my only question without getting into the personnel, is it a position that we created that is closely related to other positions in other housing authorities, and is the salary associated with that in that same range?
The answer is yes to both of those. We are ready. I'm ready to move forward with this, if at all possible, administratively.
Yeah, that's the only question I had, so I'm fine voting on it tonight. I don't know what my other commissioners feel and how they would like to move forward. But
Madam Chair?
Yes.
So when we were at the conference, you heard a lot of people say my deputy. It's a common term, from my understanding, it's a common term that housing authorities used. I know sometimes they call the director CEOs. It was confusing to me at first, but I know that a deputy is basically saying that the second person in charge when the director is not the CEO available. And it's actually super important to have somebody like that. Also, I think it's very important that you promote from within. So you're not always, sometimes it's important to look from the outside, but somebody has so much historical knowledge that candidate has, we would be doing ourselves a disservice if we don't start to, when possible, not in every situation, that you can start promoting from within.
Thank you, Vice Chair. David, do you have anything you'd like to add?
I'm just curious, what is a rice notice and what's its requirement?
So it's named after a New Jersey Supreme Court case where Rice was one of the parties in the case. It's a notice that came out of that case where if a public employee's performance, discipline is going to be discussed at a meeting of a public body, they have to be given at least 48 hours notice of the discussion. When it's going to take place in closed session, they would have the ability to have it removed to open session. It also would allow them time to prepare for the discussion, and it would allow them to have representation if they so chose.
Thank you.
I just want to ask, like Michael, I really don't have anything to go against this. I do believe that Mr. Thatham has done an amazing job to date, so. And I think Councilman Russo or Commissioner Russo has asked all the questions that I kind of think that we were all thinking of prior. So.
Do we have a motion?
Do you have anything to say? Would you like to say anything?
No.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think there's a motion on the floor, right?
Yes, to table.
To table. Is there a second? Unfortunately, there is not a second, so if there's nothing further.
Well, with the advice of council in discussing this, it brings me to the second part, which is that if we're going to have a vote here, then I would recommend to all members of the board to vote no. As the director said, this is not going to affect the operations of the authority. This commissioner has troubling concerns with this resolution. There is this change was only in the documents or the details behind it was only given to the board about 3 hours before the meeting. And I cannot stress enough that that there is a possible conflict of interest related to this resolution. And for the benefit of the authority, I would recommend that we do additional due diligence before proceeding with this resolution. And that's why I would recommend not just myself, I'm voting no, but that everybody vote no to protect themselves.
You're concerned you have a conflict?
Can I?
I do not have a conflict.
If I may, just very quickly, I'd like to place it on the record that the advice that the commissioner.
Matt, I can't hear you at all.
Sorry, Terry. I said I would just like to place it on the record that the advice that was given to the commissioner was not in reference to whether or not the board should go into closed session, whether that was appropriate. The advice that was sought was how to address the commissioner's concerns to the board without potentially creating a Rice notice violation. So my advice was limited to that only, not the merits of this resolution or whether or not there should be a discussion in closed session. I just wanted to make sure that was on the record and that the commissioners understood that to facilitate the conversation.
And because of that, I would withdraw going into closed session. Based on that advice,
I should say any discussion,
yes.
Whether to have any discussion of performance. I was not opining on that, advising the commissioner on that at all. It was only how to raise his concerns without creating exposure on behalf of the authority.
And just to add, we run into this a lot at the council meetings as well when it comes to potential conflicts. You have to make that individual decision yourself, right? So there's no lawyer in the room, there's no lawyer in the state that could give you that advice. You need to make that decision for yourself. They could guide you, but you make that decision. That's why I asked you if you felt you had a conflict. But I cannot impose that on any of my fellow commissioners. They individually would have to make that. And then ultimately a judge would make a decision if it ever came down to that. So I just want to make sure that it was clear that once you said that there was potentially a conflict, I thought you were referencing yourself, so I apologize.
Yeah, to be clear, I'm not referencing myself, and and because of avoiding going into price discussion, I'm not singling out the subject of the conflict of interest. Only that is potentially a conflict of interest, and that to protect the authority to limit its liability for exposure, is that the correct phrase, counsel, to limit the exposure? That I simply, if we're going through with a vote, I simply recommend to the board
Appreciate it.
to vote no.
Thank you, Commissioner Sanford. I also would like to put on the record that this information was provided to us at the last meeting. And obviously it was made public, right? The resolution came before us tonight, but this information was given to us a month ago. And I know Commissioner Sanford, you were very well informed of the public speakers who spoke. Obviously you watched the meeting, you were well aware of it. If there was or had been any conflict of interest, I would have asked that you actually send that to the lawyer or to Executive Director Recco so that this could have been done tonight. With that being said, I think we've heard from every commissioner here that doesn't feel that we have a conflict of interest, right? Or any issue with moving forward. So at this time, I'd like to move forward with the vote, Executive Director Recco. We appreciate you, Commissioner Sanford, and your information.
Just to be clear, the vote that is on the floor is Resolution 2025-01.05, because I know there have been some
Correct.
motions. Just want to make sure everybody understands what's being voted on.
Yep.
Thank you.
Call.
David Edwards,
Yes.
Anthony Forbes, Barbara Reyes,
Yes.
Jean Rodriguez,
Yes.
Michael Russo.
Aye.
James Sanford,
No.
Erica Seitzman.
Yes.
Motion closed.
Seconds.
Motion to adjourn, right? All in favor?
Aye.
No.
Aye.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you all.